Welcome. I am Michele Leclaire, Executive Director of Buckham Gallery. Today, I am chatting with Benjamin Muñoz about his exhibition, Endless Endeavors, on view through June 18th. Additionally, this exhibition may be viewed on our website at buckhamgallery.org. Using identity and cultural assimilation as central themes, Benjamin Muñoz raises thoughts and questions about the unique experience of immigrants and their families who migrate to the US. Muñoz tells these stories using imagery and composition that follow a chronological or linear timeline. The objects within these pieces help set the foundation for the story he is going to tell. These large-scale woodcut prints open up a dialogue that may bring comfort and insight for viewers. And I am so excited to talk to Benjamin today. Before we join the conversation, I would like to say thank you to our incredible audience, whether visiting the gallery in person or viewing these videos online, and to all the artists who submit to our exhibition calls. I appreciate you. Next, I would like to say a big thank you to the individuals and organizations who support Buckham Fine Arts Project and Gallery, including Charles Stewart Mott Foundation, Michigan Arts and Culture Council, and the National Endowment for the Arts. The Greater Flint Arts Council Share Art Genesee Grant Program made possible by the Genesee County Arts Education and Cultural Enrichment Millage Funds. Your tax dollars at work. Thank you. Okay. Buckham Gallery is pleased to present Endless Endeavors, a solo exhibition featuring work by Benjamin Muñoz, a Dallas-based artist whose primary focus is printmaking and painting. His work is often reflective of his heritage, upbringing, and current surroundings. Muñoz stacks the imagery in his work to symbolize the idea of everything in life being dependent on what came before it. A largely self-taught artist, Muñoz has had several solo exhibitions throughout the United States, and his artwork is in several museums and private collections, such as the Mexican Art Museum and the National Museum of Mexican Art. Muñoz currently serves as board president of Print Austin and is the founder-director of Millage Print Shop in Dallas, Texas. His work has been published and discussed in several arts and culture publications, blogs, podcasts, and portfolios. And he regularly gives artist talks at studios, galleries, and universities throughout the country. And I am so excited to have this opportunity to chat with Benjamin today. And I just know you're gonna love it. All right, so let's go. Hi again, I'm Michele Leclaire, Executive Director of Buckham Gallery, here with Benjamin Muñoz. We are really excited to, I'm really excited to chat with this Dallas-based artist whose primary focus is printmaking and painting. His work often is reflective of his heritage, upbringing, and the current surroundings. So welcome, Benjamin. It is so great to chat with you today.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing your work with us and our Flint audience. This has been really exciting, and I'm excited to learn more about you.
Oh, cool.
So how I generally like to start these is with a little background information, like where are you from and really what led you down the art path?
I am from Corpus Christi, Texas. It's about 6 hours south, 6 to 8 hours, depending on how you drive, south of Dallas. And yeah, I think what led me, anytime somebody asks me like why I do art, I normally just say because it's the only thing that I'm good at. So that's pretty much it, honestly. I got married and then I needed a job and I was like, well, this is all I'm good at, so I'll do this. And I got a job teaching at a local art center in Corpus. And I taught classes and workshops to make money where I could, and then started showing the work, and then it just slowly evolved into like what it is today. But yeah, it was really just, I couldn't think of what else to do for money. And I enjoy it. I love it. It's all I wanted to do. And now I'm very fortunate to be able to do what I love for a living.
Well,
so.
Yeah, I mean, how wonderful is that? I mean, if you love what you're doing, then it's, I mean, I'm not going to belittle the work aspect of art because it's definitely work, but
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's something you
Good luck.
enjoy. That's what they always say, like, oh, do what you love and you'll never work a day in your life. I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's
Sometimes I'm
still
like,
work.
yeah, yeah, it's hard because it is a lot of work. You're right. But sometimes I come home and I'm just so exhausted and I'm like, oh, and my wife is like, oh, was it hard? Just like it is. It's a lot of work. But I do feel silly complaining about it because my worst day is still really great. I mean, I'm so lucky to be upset about great things. They're called
Yeah.
my uncle calls them uptown problems. Like they're, like what are you complaining about? Like it is a problem, but it's an uptown problem. Like you could be, you know, stuck in some job you hate, or even worse, you could be dead. So
Right. You still have enough to eat, you're safe, whatever, but
and a
you
lot
can still
of,
be
I'm like,
frustrated.
yeah, I'm overwhelmed sometimes when I've done 3 solo shows a year for the last like 5 years. So
Wow.
it's just this like never ending, like as soon as one's done you start working on the next, and then that's done, and then it gets exhausting after a while. um and I've got 3 shows scheduled for next year, so I have to, and then I have like two publications in between that. Just a lot of work to do. But I mean, uh, I don't know. It's still good because I get these brief moments of clarity where I'm just like, oh, this is what I wanted. Like,
Mhm.
almost 10 years ago or something, you're starting out and you're just thinking like, I would love to do this full time. Like I would love, and then you get to do it, and then it's really stressful. But you have those moments of clarity where you're like, oh, this is the best stress. Like this is the best. Yeah, this is the best. This is ideal. This stress is
Yeah,
ideal.
well, that's fascinating. So 3 shows a year. How much of that is new work per show?
So in this show, for example, the Endless Endeavor series is the oldest thing that I'm showing, but I haven't showed that in probably about 2 years. Most of it is new work, but I'm creating it like kind of in real time, and then just showing it. I have a different body of work that I've been showing right now. It's based on the set. There's this Mashika creation story about all life coming from one cave, and within the cave is 7 sub caves, and those are the 7 tribes of the region. So I did these. I don't know if they're on my website. I don't know if you've seen them. They're these little calavera skulls that have
Mhm.
like cactuses growing out of them, and every
Yeah, yeah.
cactus is unique to a region. And then there's giant ones that have all of them growing out. Um,
Oh,
so
wow.
I did some
Yeah.
Shinkale ones like there, and then I did these giant monoprints, and I did like a different run of those. And then I did like sectionals of them. So I just showed all of those together at Pressa House. And that's a long way of answering the question of saying that every year I'll do 3 shows. The 3 shows will be the same body. So the
Mhm.
body will travel for that year.
Nice.
And then I kind of push that. And then I make a new body of work. And then that body does the 3 shows and then a new body. So I don't have to
Mhm.
make like 3 entirely different bodies of work. I just need to make something new that has never been shown in that specific city.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And this
Wow.
was great because like I had mentioned before we started recording, that I've never shown anywhere near Flint or Michigan. I've only shown in the South. So for this, I was like, well, this is great because no one's seen any of this over there. I can put it all together, and it almost feels kind of retrospective in a way.
Mhm.
Because you have everything. There's a natural progression of the work, and I wonder if anyone can notice as they walk through that how the work gets refined and tightened from
Mm.
2018, or maybe even 2017 might be the oldest in there, all the way up to 2022. Um,
Oh, interesting.
so I personally feel that the work gets tighter, as you
Mhm.
see it in 2019, and then 2020, and then 2022, and then it just, or 2021, I'm sorry.
Mhm.
Um, I think that's the newest that's in there. Or no, 20, I think the La Semana series is 2022. But anyways, sorry. I don't even remember what we
Yeah.
were talking about.
No, having all your work together in the space. Yes.
That's right. Yes. Yeah.
Okay, well, how about you talk for a moment about the title, and I'm going to bring up this one because it's this group of work, Endless Endeavors, correct?
Yeah.
So can you talk to this body of work and the title and how it relates? Share that with us, please.
Sure. So this is a series, it's like a body of work called The Endless Endeavor. And it stems, so it's actually a story. And look at that, they're ordered perfect. This is great. This is so nice.
I work really hard on that.
It looks great. Yeah. Did you shoot these in the gallery?
Mm-hmm.
It looks cool. Very nice. Yeah, so it's it goes in order from left to right, the way you have it arranged. And it tells the story of my family. It starts with my grandfather coming to the US from Mexico City. And then it explores the generations in between, my parent, my mother, and then me and my siblings, and then it ends with my daughters over there at the end. So yeah, it kind of just weaves in, and then there's like personal imagery of like things from my childhood, imagery from my grandfather, and all kinds of stuff like that. The first one, I was about to try to zoom with my hands. There's no way you can do that.
No,
at the bottom of the first one, there's a Tlaloc vessel, and Tlaloc's the rain god, or Mexica rain god. Aztec is Mexica. Aztec is like a Spaniard word placed on them, but they called themselves Mexica people. They were the Mexica. So Tlaloc vessel was the Mexica god of rain, and I used that to illustrate the people who were before him that I'll never know the names of. They didn't have birth certificates. You know, you have a regional thing, and actually. To like see how this is really cool. I didn't even notice that I talked about this earlier. The 7 caves that I worked on this past year kind of stemmed from this woodcut. I don't know if you can see, there's the 6 hills in the back of the bottom, and then the Tlaloc vessel is resting on the 7th. So that's kind of like over there in the whole creation of like origins of everything, and then the Mexica vessel is resting on the 7th. And that's just meant to illustrate like the nameless ancestors like before him. Anyways, out of the Tlaloc vessel is coming my grandfather's fist. So when my grandfather crossed the border, he told me the story when I was like, I must have been like in middle school or something. And he told me that he had crossed the border like 10 times and was sent back before he like made it across. And the time that he made it across, he said that he walked along the river of the Rio Grande and looked for like a shallow area to swim across. And so when he found the spot, he took all of his clothes off and wrapped them around his fist. That way, when he would go through the river, he'd come out on the other side. He could put dry clothes on. He wouldn't look like he just swam across. So he puts all of his clothes around his fist and he walks through the water like with his fist up. And the current is so strong that it like swoops his underwear off. And he comes into the country like butt naked, which I remember like, he's telling me the story and I'm in middle school and I'm like, this is hilarious. And then he passed away and I started to think about it more and stuff. And I started to think about like how beautiful that was. And it was like he was being born, like reborn into this new life and this new world and this new place. I was telling the story to a woman here in Dallas, and she had brought up the similarities between like a baptism and that and like the river and like just this, and it was just there's so many really beautiful ways to look at it, and anyway, so so I thought that was really great. And that Tlaloc vessel is his fist with his clothes wrapped around it. The Mexican flag is behind it and the American flag is in front to like symbolize this thing that he's like coming into. And then above that is like what he did for work, things that he was interested in, all kinds of stuff like that. And then, so the whole thing is stacked with imagery and every little object represents something. And there's this grand story that kind of like moves through the whole thing. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, that you brought up the stacking. So that seems to be a compositional element in your work, is the stacking of the images. So what is the importance and why you use this?
So the stacks, the stacks aid the narrative of the story, the structure of the story, like and there's different ways that, so sometimes the stack is in order of like importance, or like what's relevant to the story. For example, in my Justice and Righteousness print, I have a giant boulder at the bottom that is like dark, and it's where your eyes are pulled to immediately.
Hold on.
And that's there. Yeah, here we go. That down there. So the boulder there with the Quiamasquieres represents my grandfather and how he's the foundation of the family. So in that instance, Quiamasquieres is something that he used to say, and that sign is from like his tile business that he ran outside in the front. So it's kind of all like representational of him, and it's at the bottom because it's what everything else rests on. It's what's supporting everything else above it. Without it, nothing could stand, right? Everything would like fall down. So in that instance, it's in order of like relevance and stuff. But sometimes, and actually the one right next to it is similar, the couch and what the couch represents, where it's from. It's again a literal couch from my childhood that was in a literal place that provides context and like a time frame for the narrative. So again, that's representational. It's like it's an order of like relevance. But in other instances, it's chronological. So it sometimes what's at the bottom is what happened first, a sequence of events. This led to this, which led to this, which led to this, which led to this. But there is always a reason for it, and it alternates between the two. I try to keep it consistent within a body of work. So like these two go together. So since this isn't chronological, I try to make the series not chronological, and I try to make it in order of significance. If it is chronological, I try to keep that body chronological. And in addition to being able to be read this way, the series can be read this way, as you noticed when you arranged them. So you can read them bottom up, left to right, as they're like displayed.
Yeah, so if the Endless Endeavors ones, they were in chronological order then instead of significant?
Yes.
Yeah, awesome, thank you. So, you know, in addition to your compositional choices, scale is also important to these works. I mean, they're giant. Everyone who comes in, they're like, oh my goodness, they're not used to seeing woodcuts, you know, at this size. You know, so the general audience, of course, is impressed by the scale, and the printmakers who have stood in front of that, you know, these 8-foot tall prints have been absolutely marveled by the size. You know, so can you speak a little bit to your choice and scale? You know, why so large? Because I'm sure it's the physicality of the panels that you must have been working with. That's a lot, and the paper, as we know from its stuff.
Oh, not fun. Yeah. I made them at that scale because I had to. So those were created for the Art Center of Corpus Christi. I got a grant they have a mural program. Those arches fit in the side of the building. So the size is determined already. It's a really beautiful building, right on the water. It's a great gallery space. There's multiple galleries. It's a beautiful, beautiful place. And the architecture is like a sort of Spanish colonial, you know, big archways and stuff. So those fit in the grooves. So the size was determined for me already. The program normally goes to painters. People come through, they paint the panels and they install them. They wanted to do something really different, really fresh. And I noticed that they were using wood to paint on, and I thought, I'll carve them, and I bet I'll get that grant because it'll be really strange. And sure enough, they were like, we've never heard of this. Like, you can, and I was like, I'm gonna do it. And I wasn't thinking, and I didn't realize how much work it was gonna be to carve 6. There's actually supposed to be 7. There's supposed to be 7 8-foot panels, and I just couldn't do a 7th. And I was like, here, so we're gonna do like, let's just do a vinyl thing on the 7th that talks about the process and everything, why they're carving things like that. So that's what we ended up doing, because it was just so daunting of a task. But yeah, so I started the scale at that size originally just because I had to. And as soon as we peeled the first one back, there's something really different about looking at it flat when you're carving. And then when you peel it and you see it upright, something happened that really just like, you watch Stranger Things?
Yeah.
You see when they like float in the air? That's what it was like, is I was just like absorbed. We peeled the print back And it just, when it's upright, let me say it like this, that when you're carving something laying down, you're looking down on it. And there is a sort of, because we're human beings, I think we assign, without even realizing it, subconsciously, we assign power to things and stuff like that. There's a reason that the globe is drawn the way it is. It's a rock floating in space, but somebody who made it put their country on top. I mean, the world could easily be upside down. There's a certain power structure to the way you view things. And when we peeled that print back, it flipped the roles, and the objects, the creatures, the animals, they were suddenly like looking down on me. And it had this like really powerful, it was this powerful interaction where I felt almost absorbed and like swallowed by the scale of the work. And it really changed the trajectory of the rest of it. I mean, after I peeled, because I did one first, and I went back and started resketching them when I realized the power of scale. I was like, oh, there's a lot we can do here. And objects became more elaborate, and the snake became more like, you know, just everything was bigger. And now there's some things that I wouldn't want to make small, because it's such a grand idea. And especially when you're talking about generations back, it's this idea of life being so much larger than yourself. It's fitting that work would be physically larger than you, to kind of remind you how small you are.
Right, you're just a small part in it.
Yeah, you're just it's a puff of smoke and it's done. That's your life. So I mean, this idea of just this grand scale that not just swallows you this way, but entirely this way. And I really ended up liking the archways. It felt almost like you were peeking through these windows, like almost like cathedral, like you walk in and it's like this sort of, I don't know, there was just something that I loved so much about it, that after even though I was forced to do that scale, when it was done, I thought, I'm gonna stay large. I haven't done anything that size again. I went down, and now my sweet spot is like 36 by 62. And I really enjoyed that size, because I feel like it's still very large, but it's also more manageable. Yeah.
So for the Corpus Christi show, did you actually show the blocks in the space, or was it the prints?
The blocks. So we showed the blocks outside. The blocks that's part of the arrangement with the grant, was that they own the blocks and I own the prints. So the blocks are still over there at the art center. They're just like permanently bolted into the wall.
Nice.
And they're out there. And then we showed the prints in the gallery inside. So we had like a big show, and I can send you photos of it. It was really beautiful space, and it was just really fun interaction too. Because you have like the ribbon cutting outside of the blocks, and then you can go inside and you can see everything reversed and read the text and everything like that.
Yeah. So did you have to hand print these, or, because I can't imagine a press this large?
There's a press this large. We were originally planning on printing there. But we ran the numbers, and again, this was a grant, so they have a capped budget. And they were like, maybe we can get them printed since you're going to do all the work of carving them. And I was like, yeah. And they were like, there's a print shop that we can send you to out of town to print them. And I was like, great. So then we ordered paper for it and everything like that. Then they got in touch with the print shop, and they were going to charge, I think all in all, we figured that it was going to be about $18,000. And they were like, we're not doing that. There's no way we're going to pay for that. So you're going to have to print them by hand. At this point, we had already ordered the paper, which I don't know if you've noticed. It's in the gallery. It's thick paper. It's Lennox.
Yeah.
It's thick. And that's made for a press. And to print by hand, it's insane.
Right.
So we put out this big like call for help. I mean, I got on Instagram, and I was like, I have these giant people at this point had been kind of following the journey of me carving them on Instagram. People felt invested. And I was like, look, guys, it's done. I need help printing them. I have to do them by hand. Please help me. I don't have any money. I'll buy you free pizza. I'm going to be down. I put all the blocks in a U-Haul. I drive them from Dallas to Corpus Christi. And I just tell people, like, I'm going to be in Corpus every day for 6 days printing at the art center. If you want to help me, I'm here, and I have extra barons. And then that was it. I just put it out on Instagram, and I was like, okay, let's see who comes. And we had people come like every day. It was crazy. Some people drove hours to come help us just because they'd been kind of following the journey on Instagram. There were people that came from like A&M Corpus Christi that were there, like students. We had some grad students come out and help me print some. And, you know, you just had them for however long. And then they'd be like, I got to go at 3, I have class at 3 or something. Then we'd take off, and someone else would just show up randomly like, hey, you need help? We had people come from UT El Paso, UT Rio Grande Valley. I mean, all over. People would be, oh, we saw it, and we were in the shop and we saw you doing it, and we all jumped in my car and we drove over here. And, you know, so it was really, and we had pizza and hung out, and it was like but because the blocks were so big, everybody would get like a 3-foot area to kind of do this. And it took us about, I'm not exaggerating, it took us probably about 2.5 hours to get one print. From inking to rolling the paper to placing it and then you'd peel it back, and then you'd be like, that area needs more ink.
Right.
Right back down. And we were able to pull 3 prints a day. So the edition is 3. We have no artist proofs. And yeah, it was probably one of the roughest string of 6 days of my life. I
bet that was a stressful day. 6 days.
It was rough. And my hand was like done. I remember my hand, it like wouldn't really, because I mean, just every day doing this, and yeah, my hand was kind of like, it was strange.
Probably like get frozen in certain positions.
My back, every part of me. I felt like I was 80 years old. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's amazing. You had so many people come out and help, because that's the one thing, standing in front of them, like, how is it been printed?
Yes. No, collaborative effort in pizza.
Yeah. Some people are like, well, I've heard of them using steamroller sometimes with a steamroller. I'm like, I don't know. It looks hand printed.
Yeah.
But
we talked about using a steamroller, but the paper was, I mean, they spent thousands of dollars on the paper. So steamroller printing is so inconsistent that we were scared of wasting paper. Because once the paper's gone, it's gone. They're not buying more for us. I think they spent like almost $3,000 on the paper. So they were like, that's all you get, and you can't have any more. So I was scared that by the time we figured out everything as far as inking, pressure with the steamroller, we would have burned through like 5 or 6 giant sheets of paper. And then you're outside. So there's wind, rocks, dust. If something, you can get all that right, but then a strong wind blows, because remember, we're right by the ocean where this place is. So there's sand, there's, things blow in there. And there was too many elements. And I thought that even though this was more difficult, it was more controllable. So we went with doing it by hand.
Well, it looks great. Yeah.
Thanks. So how long have you been? You're the director there, yeah?
I am now. Yep. I started, I moved to Flint in 2015, and then in 2016, I became an artist member of the co-op. And then about late 2018, I was hired as the exhibition director. It had just had the one director, and it was honestly too much for one person. And the good fortune, I was hired, and it was, just a part-time gig. And it grew over a couple of years. And then in fall of 2020, my predecessor decided to retire. And apparently it was always in her plan that I would follow in her place. And so, cool. And fortunately the board agreed. And I wasn't quite ready to move into the position in November 1st, 2020, but because my kids were still doing like online school and at home, It was a lot. And then I was, and though going from 30 hours to 40 hours a week was huge, but the sense of responsibility changed. So it was definitely, it took a little time to go from doggy paddling to like strides. But I feel
Yeah.
like at this point, it's, about a year and a half later, things are going well, and I've made a lot of growth, and the gallery has as well. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I
it's been
love
good.
I love what you're doing with the space. I mean, the exhibitions they're incredible.
Yeah.
And the person that I'm paired with, her name is Margaret.
Margaret
Yeah,
Davis.
so amazing. The work is just incredible. I'm blown away. And she's not far from me. She's in New Orleans.
Yeah, well, she's originally from Ypsilanti in Michigan. She
Oh, I
was a
didn't know that.
teacher. She was a faculty at Eastern Michigan University when she applied for the show the same year you did. And so, and I have a committee reviews all the submissions and everything gets rated. And then what I do is I go through and I make pairings out of the different solo shows.
Yeah.
And so I just thought it would be a really great complement, the two
Yeah.
bodies of work. But
What made you want to pair our shows together?
well, she was also dealing with immigrations and struggles and boundaries and barriers. So it was sort of these different, but in a different way, So I thought it was kind of an interesting pair. But then I guess last summer she moved to New Orleans with her partner, and they opened a gallery down there, and are doing great. So instead of her work, had been nearby, but then she moved and had to drive it up in a U-Haul.
Was she able to see the exhibition?
No, she dropped it off, and then she flew home. And then I guess she's flying up tomorrow evening, and she'll get a U-Haul and arrive to pick it up Sunday.
Oh, well, at least she'll be able to see it before she tears it down.
Yeah. Okay, so
I'm ready.
we were talking about process. So I brought up this slide because I was kind of curious. Oh, one, I love these images, of course, but these are chiaroscuro woodcuts, and I was curious as to what is the difference between a chiaroscuro woodcut and then like a color block or multiple color block.
Yeah,
you could talk about the process of these.
So as far as process goes, you could print them in a similar way. There's a lot of ways to get color in a woodcut. One of the ways is what you said, a multi-block print. So you would, and hopefully what I'm saying isn't confusing, or is at least useful for somebody who doesn't understand printmaking. But one of the ways that you can put color in a woodcut is you take your key block, which is just the black outline, right, block, and you register it using the press. You basically transfer the image onto empty blocks. You carve the empty blocks, and then to add a color, every block is a new color. So you can have a red block, a blue block, a green block, and then your key block, which is the black, which is what puts the outline on. And then you can just run the same piece of paper over each block, and then, more color, and then you put the key in, and boom, now you have a colored image. Another way to do it is to do a reduction woodcut, which is where you take one wood block and then you kind of draw the image out, you ink it up, and you print that color, and then you carve more out on the same block, ink it a different color, print right on top, and then so you carve more and more and more. The last ink you do is black, and that goes on there. So this method right here is nothing like what I just described with the reduction. There's two blocks, and there's just two, and that's also what separates it from multi-block, is it's multiple blocks, but it's a pair, not multiple, right? Multiple would be, it's just a pair of blocks. And chiaroscuro basically is where you play with the light. It's big, exaggerated things of color, hyper exaggerated sections of color that create this sense of like extreme depth and light and just a dramatic focus, normally done in a dark color. it's a kind of almost a painterly thing to do. And it's basically just a strong wash of a dark color with very intense pops of light. So with this, I'm restricted to the one color, which is just, there's the red, and then that's it. There's red, and then there's the key block, which is black. So everything in there that you see, all the pinks, all the white, the red, there's really only one block of color. It's just red. And the way that I carve it allows me to kind of get a lot of different variations of tone and value.
Right, so you're carving out the white areas.
Yeah, everything you see that's white is carved. And then everything that you see that would appear like pink is actually just carved, but the distance between the lines is what changes the value, or at least what makes your eyes think that something is different. For example, in this ice cream cart, you can see the sticker that says give it your best on the face of it. And then right next to it, it looks like those are different colors, right? It almost looks like what's next to it is pink and the sticker is red, like a different color, but that's the exact same color. It's just rolled on red. There's nothing different happening there. It's the same ink. It's just the way that it's carved makes it appear different. And you could see the same thing on Heed, the woodcut with the bull on top. If you go down to the very bottom, you can see the graffiti where it says hold back looks a specific color. And then underneath it where it says buy one, get four, the numbers 1 and 4 look like they're different colors than the hold back, the graffiti. But again, same color, it's just the way you carve. There's a lot you can do with texture and line in printmaking, which is one of the reasons that I'm so drawn to it. There's something about the graphic quality of the line that's really powerful in the way that you can convey your narratives. And if you're, there's just something so dramatic and like, it's really good. We were saying earlier before we recorded that some things are visually, it's given to you better. It can be better presented in printmaking than it could in painting. And some things could be better as a sculpture than they could be in painting, depending on what you're trying to say, what you want to do. And I think for what I want to say and how I want to say it, printmaking does a really great job of helping me speak.
Yeah, oh, definitely. The imagery, or the medium lends itself to the imagery. 100%. I absolutely love the graphic nature of these. Yeah. Well, actually, okay, I have one more process question, and then I'm going to move away from process. Okay, so you hand carve these, right? The blocks. Now, how long would you say? Not the giant ones, but these with the more detail. You know, how long do you carve? It takes a long time. It has to. It's so physical.
It depends. Yeah, if I have a deadline and I procrastinate, I can knock them out pretty quick. But if I take my time, if it's up to me and someone is like, you have however long, I would take about a month to carve it. That's a comfortable pace for me. About a month, casually carving on it. And some days that are really intense, but sometimes going, I don't feel like this today. I'm going to do something else. About a month. The elephant, the Justice and Righteousness was done in a month. And I thought probably a little over a month and a couple of days. And sorry. No, it's fine. That was very comfortable for me. I enjoyed doing that about a month. The one next to it, Salvation, was done, and I want to say like carving about 10 days. Carving 10 days, and then there was additional drawing, and then you got to print it and everything. But as far as the carving goes, that was done in 10 days. Wow. And I had a studio assistant named Braulio, and he helped me a lot too. That I can kind of get him to, I could start some lines and then be like, that's what the texture looks like. Do that in this area. So he's on the other side, I'm on this side. And that's how we were able to finish that in 10 days. And then some of the other ones, the red ones, Heat and Epilogue, those were done insanely fast. The octopus we did in 7 days. We carved it in 7 days. That's the fastest I've ever carved anything.
Wow. Yeah.
So these were published at the Flatbed Center for Contemporary Printmaking. Wonderful place. I love Flatbed. but their schedule is very tight. So it needs to be there when it needs to be there. And I was struggling with the drawing and the composition, and it wasn't ready. And if I was to pick up the phone and go like, hey, Catherine, can we reschedule this collaboration? She'll let me, but it'll be about a year out. And I didn't want to do that. So I was like, I've got to finish. And when I finally got the composition correct and the drawing to where I was like, I am happy with this, I had like 8 days to finish it. So I spent the first day, I basically wrote out, how can I do this in 8 days? And I was like, okay, on this day I carved the octopus in the sky. This day I do this day I do that. I looked at it and I was like, there's no way I can finish this. It's impossible. So I was like, here's what I'll do. I'll do it in 7 days. And on this first day of the 8th day, I'll call literally everybody I know that knows how to carve. And I was like, I need help. Can you help me? So then I took the schedule and I was like, okay, can you help me on Monday? And they went, okay. So I would write his name next to that. And I got people to come in every single day of the 7 days. And some people came for like 2 hours. Some people came for like however long. And they would just come in and I'd be like, okay, can you just hit the flowers? Like just do the flowers. Like I showed them how I wanted it, did the lines. And then I'd have friends. And then that was really fun too, because then it wasn't so stressful because I was hanging out with my friends. And I'd be like, oh, thank you for coming to help me. And we would just like talk about like dumb stuff. And then they'd be like, okay, I got to go. And I'd be like, all right, thanks. And then someone else would come like an hour later and I'd be like, thank you for helping me. And they helped me like push it over the finish line there. So that was good.
Yeah, that's actually one of the really cool things about working in a print shop. It's not as isolated as being
Yes.
alone in a studio.
Printmaking is so collaborative. It's yeah, because you have to share equipment and you have to share, because those machines are so expensive. So everything is, you have these community shops, and printmaking is so much more communal than I think any other form of art. And because of that, you have this really great sense of camaraderie, and everyone is like, hey, and like everybody knows each other. And and I think everybody knows that, because if I'm like, I'm a printmaker, if I meet somebody like at a gallery opening or something, I'm like, I'm a printmaker. They're like, oh, do you know my friend John? And you would never do that to a painter. Like I would never go somewhere and they're like, I paint. I'm like, oh, do you know my friend Beth? Like she paints. Like so many people paint. Why would I know your friend Beth? But with printmaking, we do know each other. It's like a cult. Like we're all, it's like what you told me with the person in Michigan who came to see the show. I've never met that person, but on Instagram, we know each other. Because even though they're miles away, everyone in printmaking just kind of, we have this weird invisible bond that we're like, you know, it's like, I don't know. I can't describe it. The only thing I can describe it, I can't really describe it. You know what it reminds me of is, it reminds me of skateboarding. When I grew up skateboarding. That was a weird way to put that. When I grew up, like I didn't grow up. I mean, obviously I grew up. While I was growing up, I would skateboard a lot, and you can be best friends with anybody that skateboards when you're growing up, and you kind of just walk in the skate park, and if you know how to skate and they know how to skate, there's this immediate connection where you're like, oh, where else should I go, and what are the other parks in town, and and they're all like, oh yeah, here's my number, let's do, yeah, we can all go together. You want to get in my car? Like we can get in my car, stranger, and I'll take you. You know, there's this immediate connection. And I don't think I've experienced anything like that after skateboarding, except for when I stepped in a print shop. And I was like, it feels, and I don't think they realized that because, you know, they didn't skateboard, but this feels like I'm in a skate shop right now. Skateboarding was the most like equitable thing I've ever experienced in my life, because you show up and there was just this great leveler, which was like, can you skate? And it didn't matter if you were rich or poor, or black, white, nothing mattered anymore. It was like, can you tray flip? And if you could tray flip, it didn't matter if you were literally homeless. You were the coolest person at the skate park. Everybody wanted to be your friends. I remember going skateboarding with a kid that was like in elementary school. I was like in high school already. And the age group, this guy's in his 30s, this kid's 7, like it didn't matter. If you could skate and you were on the same level, we were all, get in my car, 6-year-old kid. And we were like, it was crazy. And I think the print shop is really the same thing again. You know, like it doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter what race you are. There's this sense of camaraderie, and like, because we share techniques also. There's printmaking is so technical that you kind of almost have, whereas there's no big breakthroughs in painting recently, you know?
Right.
But printmaking, a lot of it's chemical even, you know, with lithography and stuff. And you can look at you, how did you do that? Like, how did you get it to look like that? And someone will say, like, I put Funyuns on the block. I put Funyuns on my limestone, and Funyuns have gum arabic in them. And when it hit it, it spread everywhere. And that's how I got that texture. There was a chemical reaction when I spilt my Funyuns on it, and the print looks like that now. And I realized reading the ingredients on the back of the Funyun bag that there's gum arabic on it. And that's what happened. And now there's this exchange, and yeah, the print shop is just, and we have big conferences. You have Print Austin, SGC, Mid-America. People come out to, and it's just, you know, it's, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. There's something about it that I really love. Yeah, I don't even know why I'm talking about this. I don't remember what the question was or anything. But
we were talking about the blocks, but that's okay. This is awesome because printmakers are the best people, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, I love printmaking. Maybe that's why I'm so drawn to you. There's this connection.
Yeah.
That's part why I think you're cool. Is you can spot them. You can kind of spot them out. You can see it. There's ink under the fingernails or something from opening the can. There's a way you can just kind of, you spot them and you're like, are you a printmaker?
Definitely. Oh, so okay. So did you draw the images directly on the board, the boards? Yeah. So you're not like, I mean, maybe sketching first, but okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
So I have sketches that are like just almost scribbles. But it's because I'm telling stories. So I start every block by writing. I'll just write what I'm feeling, what I'm thinking. If something's bothering me, if I'm struggling to understand something, why someone made a decision or what's going on in my family or something, I just start writing and writing and writing, and I'll have like 2-3 pages of me writing. And when I'm done and I've kind of gotten all out and I'm like, this is what I want to say, then I take that writing and I assign visual aids to the writing, to the story, to the narrative that I just wrote, to the thought process or whatever it is, whether that's, you know, a story or just a thought or me trying to dissect what's going on exactly. So I find the best way to communicate that visually. And I go, okay, this paragraph can be illustrated by this. This can be illustrated by this. And then once I get all the imagery, then I go, okay, now let's provide structure to the account. Take all the imagery, and then how can I compose this in a way that mimics what I just wrote down? So in a flat file in my studio, I have basically like writings and meaning to all of these blocks. And because that's how it starts. And then I draw it all out, and then, yeah, I put it on. So then I have like a rough sketch that is just like, okay, this is going to go here. This will go on top. In some cases, like for this octopus, the woodcut epilogue, I don't even draw the palette cart. I literally drew a circle roughly that size, and I wrote the word palette cart. And I was like, that's going to go there, because most of the drawing is going to take place on the block. So really what I'm doing in my sketchbook or my sketches is I'm just working with composition. I'm just playing with composition to see what would look like, what would look best stacked on top of what. And then I drop the block on a table. I stain it red so I can see where I draw. And I just climb right on top of it, and I sit right down. I sit down on it, and I just start drawing. And every once in a while, I'll stand it up because the blocks are so big that the perspective gets skewed of my drawing. I think that my drawing looks good, and then I stand it up, and I'm like, oh, that's not right. So I'll lay it back down again, erase it. But yeah, I basically just climb right on top, and I draw it all in, and then I take Sharpies and shade it in and all that.
Oh, that's awesome. I sometimes when I would draw on my blocks, because I was working with pine, which was kind of soft, sometimes it end up with because I press too hard. But,
yeah, that happens.
Yeah.
I've been there.
So have identity and cultural assimilation always been central in your work?
I think without realizing it, yes. And it wasn't until recently that I put it like, I directly lit it up. Like I intentionally put a spotlight on it. It had always been there kind of lingering in the back, which I thought that's how I knew I wanted to pursue it aggressively. There were things that I like for the grant for Corpus Christi. I proposed that idea. That was my proposal, was telling the story of my family. and I wanted to do that. Afterwards, you know, there's other things, that the grants programs, and I was kind of like creating proposals that met the criteria of the grant or the fellowship or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And what I started to do was like dissect what I was making and going like, okay, what's something that I can't escape no matter how I try to bend it to the narrative that is required. And something that was always kind of just floating on the sides, something that I couldn't ever shake, was that idea of identity, cultural assimilation, or generational assimilation, and what that means. All of that kind of just, it was always there, sometimes in small amounts, but I was like, that's interesting. And I had never noticed. I think I was giving an artist talk somewhere and someone else had brought it up, about like that idea of how generations change, and how visually it was noticeable in the work. And I started to think about it, and I was like, I do believe that. It's so interesting. Sometimes the shows, art critics come out and they write stuff up, and I shouldn't read them, but I read them. I like to pretend that I don't, but I read them and I'm like, what do they say? But they'll make points that I'm like, I didn't see that. Like I didn't see that in my own work. But you know what's wild is that they're like, Muñoz thinks blah, 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 blah. And I didn't carve it with that intention, but that is exactly what I think. And it's amazing that they can pick that up. Some art critics are really bad at their job, but some of them are like, they do really great stuff like that. And I read that and I was like, yeah, that's there. Like, yeah, that is there. That those ideas are there. They're just floating. And I thought, like, you know what I should do is take the spotlight of what I'm putting, and I should remove that out and give some time to this thing that it seems like subconsciously I can't shake. And I put it there, lit it up, and it really changed everything, because I realized that I had a lot to say about it, and I didn't realize that I did. But there was a lot that I wanted to kind of like get off my chest, and a lot that I wanted to explore, and a lot that I wanted to understand more. And yeah, it's amazing. I think you don't realize that people are raised differently than you until you're an adult. You know, you think everybody has the same traditions, and everybody's house has the same decorations, and everybody does this, and everyone's parents think this way and say these things. And it's not until you get older that you're like, oh, how I was raised was real unique. It was very unique. And I have just this paradigm, this worldview, because of how I was raised, because of the culture I was raised in, and the things the traditions that I have. Yeah, it's really, all of identity is rooted in that. Yeah.
Yes, and I hope you don't mind my asking. Do you know, like, did your family, like your grandparents or your parents, ever talk about like their ideas about identity and cultural assimilation? Like, were they clinging to more of their ancestral heritage more, or were they wanting to assimilate quicker?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was a combination of the two things. I think that there was, it's hard, you know. So both of my parents are first generation. On my dad's side, on my father's side, I think that he was, in his mind, he was always Mexican. He was always like, even though he lived in the States, got a great education, was a professor at university. His brothers became professors at universities all over the country. They all came to the US on student visas, got educated, taught at universities. But they were all still very much like, we are Mexican. And bought houses back in Chiapas, and they would hang out there. He still has family out there. And the youngest brother of all of my father's uncles and his father, he just retired and he bought a house in Chiapas. He's going back to Mexico. So they always had that mindset of like, we are Mexican. My mom's family, I think he was very ready to embrace being American. He was very proud of being American. He didn't grow up privileged. Not that my father's family grew up privileged, but they were educated people. They were educated men, and through education lifted themselves out of poverty. My dad's brother it teaches at a university in Fort Lauderdale. He's a neuroscientist, a research.
Oh, wow.
He's a PhD in neuroscience. Most of my family went into education on my father's side. My mother's side, I think, my grandfather came over here, had no education, and he just worked with his hands. Was a handyman, did odd jobs, and did what he could to scrape ends meet. He would go back to Mexico once he became a citizen, buy chandeliers and stuff, come back to the US and sell them. He realized, he comes here in like the 50s or something like that. He realizes that there's no Saltillo tile anywhere at that point in time. And he's like, this is really popular where I'm from, there's no Saltillo. Went around to look for it, they didn't sell it. So he started importing. He became, for a while, there was a brief time period of a couple of years where he was the only person in the US selling Saltillo tile. And I mean, he made a killing. He was like importing it from Mexico, and if you wanted it, you had to buy it from him. And I think because of all of that, you could try to do that in Mexico. It would be very hard. And I think that he fell in love with that, with that romantic idea that we're all raised with that whole, this is America and you can do whatever you want. Like if you want to start a business selling cups with faces on them, you can do that. Go out and sell cups with faces on them. And I think because of that, he just loved America, and he was very proud to be American. And I think in a way that I think my father's family wasn't. Not that they weren't proud to be in America, but I think they always viewed it as like, we lifted ourselves out of poverty through education, through opportunity, and through hard work that we did for ourselves. And I'm a Mexican person. And a lot of this is rooted in assumption. So please, I haven't spoken with them. Both of them are passed away now. And on the other side, I can see a lot more of the evidence of my grandfather more taking advantage of the opportunity of just being here. So I don't think he was very proud of the work that he did, but I think he was very aware that good work is nothing if not done in the right place. So I think because of that, he was much more anxious to assimilate into the US than my father's side was. So to answer your question, that was a very long way of saying, to answer the question, it's hard to say because it's kind of everywhere. I know that on my father's side, his dad and his brothers, I don't think ever assimilated into the US. I can go to their house. One of them lives down the street. I can go in his house. They won't speak English. I mean, he'll speak English to me. He taught at SMU here in Dallas for a long time. So he'll speak English. He can speak it. His wife understands English, refuses to speak it. I will speak to her in English. She'll respond in Spanish. She understands me. She'll just, boom, she responds in Spanish. And it's just this culture of like who they are as people. And it's just rooted inside of them. They never lost it. My grandfather, English. All of his kids, English. Was constantly just very, very proud to be American in a way that I think, not that he was like ever embarrassed or ashamed of where he came from, but I think that he was just kind of viewed it as like yeah, I came from there. That's the past. I'm here. In a way that I don't think I would even be comfortable with. I think he embraced it in a very aggressive, not that he would ever get, I honestly don't know. I don't know. He's a very complicated person. Most human beings are. And it's when, gosh, how do I put this? When somebody does something like that, when someone's 19 years old and they put their life in a bag and they cross a river and bring their family into a better country, work hard to support a family of 10 by themselves, and then they die when you're young, you tend to idolize that person. You're just like, this is an incredible person who did something for our family that we can't ever repay. And then, like anybody who is old and complicated, they die, and then you start to hear things and you're like, they did what? And you're like, oh no. But they're, I don't know. They're just complicated. I don't know how else to put it.
Yeah. Oh no, it's just interesting because you know, your work definitely speaks to heritage and the journey and everything, but it's not. I don't read like an opinion that. What am I trying to say? Um, it's embracing both sides, I guess, is what I'm
Mm,
trying to say. I don't see trying to take one more than the other necessarily. It's just like telling of the journey. And I was just kind of curious, like how
mhm,
what influences you would have had growing up, and maybe stories, because of course it may come as a shock to you.
mhm.
I'm a white woman with Northern European background, and my family has been here longer than um, I, you know, anyone can remember. So
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of those stories, you know, that even with the German, the French, you know, whatever, you might make bake certain like German cookies at Christmas time or something, but there
Yeah.
is nothing, there's no
Yeah,
other
yeah,
like strong um traditions
yeah,
really,
yeah,
you know, other than
yeah.
the ones that are just all the general basic what you think everybody did growing up, which you then
Yeah.
later find out they didn't.
Yes, yeah. You
So
know, that's
I'm just very curious, you know, about, of course, your experience is different
yeah,
than
oh, absolutely. Yeah. I know that
mine.
they're the way we celebrated holidays, you know, the way there is Spanish spoken. There's food that not everybody eats. Not everybody has tinga on Christmas. I thought everyone had tinga on Christmas. People don't even know what that is. And we had to have it. You know, and then you have like tres leches cake, and a lot of food. A lot of it is food. You know, food is like where your soul is. So a lot of it
Yeah.
comes out in the food, and just these quirky little traditions, and even things that are mainstream now that weren't before. I would say that I see more of like, there are exceptions, right? But I think I see more of like a melting pot idea now than I did when I was younger. My wife is white. Our kids go to a school where a lot of the kids are white. And we went to like a birthday party for this little girl the other day, blonde hair, blue eyes, and she was dressed as Mirabel from Encanto.
Hmm.
Um, and they were breaking a piñata, and they had like all of these other kids that were all dressed like characters from Encanto. Some that
Hmm.
are black, some that are, you know, and it was, I had a moment where I was kind of taken back, and I don't think my wife can fully appreciate it because she's white, but there was a moment where I stopped and I looked and I was like, this is so incredible that this little blonde girl, this American white girl, is pretending to be a Colombian woman. The idea of that she wants to be Colombian, that is so powerful. Because for generations, every little brown girl wanted to be Cinderella. She wanted to be this blonde haired, blue eyed girl and have a life that was, her life was never romanticized. Nobody wanted to be her. But this idea that everything is turned around, not that it's turned around, but just that it's included in the narrative. And it was just, I don't think that even now, I don't think she realizes how powerful that is, that these little girls are growing up admiring someone else's culture and appreciating it. And it's just so powerful to see a little girl that wants to be this Colombian girl, especially like an American white girl that wants to be Colombian. That's amazing to me. Um, and you know, and yeah, to just look at that and go like, wow, like I love the colors and I love the this and I want a piñata and I want, you know, like it's so inclusive. Um, yeah, I don't know. So a lot of that stuff, to circle back, a lot of that stuff that was unique to me is a lot more mainstream now. It's a lot more recognizable. People know what Dia de los Muertos is now.
Hmm.
You have Coco, you have you all this
Yeah.
stuff that where you didn't have any representation before, and it's, you know, there's jackets, stuff that you know only your grandma wore that is like in popular culture now. You have these crazy like fabric sandals that like your grandma got from Mexico that like, you know, I don't know, Chance the Rapper will wear. And then like now every kid in high school wants these sandals. Like there's a lot of like Bad Bunny is huge. Spanish music is huge. Like Spanish music in America is big, like sold out arenas in Spanish. And it's not just descendants of immigrants at these shows. There's people that love the music and in some cases don't understand a single word of it. They're just going and they're like, I love this. So I don't know. I think assimilation has moved from, not fully, right? We're taking baby steps, but I think that assimilation now is not just something that somebody from the US does or somebody who just came to the US is doing. I think that assimilation is almost happening to everyone in the country. To each other. I think we're assimilating to each other.
I think so too.
There's just through popular culture, by us like amplifying more diverse voices, us platforming other people's cultures, it's changing the culture and the narrative in a more broad way in America. Even you guys going out of your way to give people like me exhibitions like this in spaces that are very far, to taking this and providing that narrative to a lot of people that wouldn't be exposed to that work. Even just think about Flint. The piece behind you is in Spanish. You understand how powerful that is? Like even, I don't know what Flint is like, but let's just say 10 years ago, would that have been showed in a gallery downtown in a prominent space, work that was in another language that people wouldn't have they might have been like, I can't show this here. No one can read it. Nobody can, it's not for them. That's what they would have thought. But the work is for everybody. And the fact that everything is changing and being platformed in a way that is, I don't know. Now I'm just kind of like going on about it, but I think that it's very powerful. And in some cases, maybe not even 10 years ago, maybe even 5 years ago, that wouldn't have been showed somewhere in a lot of places. So I don't know. I don't know. I go back and forth on whether assimilating to the US is something that is good or bad. I don't know. I think that whether I would like to admit it or not, it's not that I have a problem admitting it. I will openly admit, and I don't have a problem with admitting it, that I'm not a Mexican person. I was born in the US and I'm very American. I go to Starbucks and I have a specific drink. I get like a grande hot white mocha with almond milk, no whipped cream, an extra shot, and 2 pumps instead of 4. That's a very American thing. So that, you have to kind of be honest with yourself and be like, I am fully assimilated into this place. But also, I'm not, I don't know. There's the reality of what our country is still legalistically not very inclusive and not very equitable. Yeah. So it doesn't matter if you embrace it, it's whether or not someone else embraces you. And there's that too. So there's just a lot of moving parts and it's hard to put a pin in it. But it's fun to tackle and work and talk to people and have these conversations and just talk about it and talk about the progress that we have made and talk about how assimilation isn't something that's unique to immigrants and the descendants of immigrants, but something that we're kind of grappling with as a country and how we're getting used to each other.
Well, I know in some conversations, people are sometimes worried about cultural assimilation in a bad way. Like they don't want to take something that is like sacred and like maybe like, and I can't remember what the true name was, but Aztec god, and then use those images in a way to decorate their home, and that way might be offensive, So I know there are some conversations like, well, how do we appreciate and enjoy and embrace these things, but also be respectful while doing it?
Yeah, no, I you know what, that's a great point, and I don't know the answer to that. I have no idea. There's I was thinking about that the other day. What did I see? I don't know. I feel a way. about that. And I'm still dissecting what that means, but I would, yeah, I don't know. It just feels, I don't know, because you want everything to be inclusive, but at the same time, I feel like there are things that belong to me that don't belong to you. And I don't know if I'm in the wrong for feeling that. I don't know if that's right. Maybe you have let's talk about art, right? Let's talk about art, things that we want to make. Maybe you have the right to make work about just Black leaders in America. Maybe all day you just want to paint portraits of Black leaders in America. That's fine because you're American, they're American. But I also am uncomfortable with that, and I don't know why. I'm uncomfortable with you doing that all day and then making money off of it, selling it, profiting it. That makes me uncomfortable, because I feel like that's not yours, but it is because you're American and they're American. And isn't that what they wanted? Isn't equality what all of those people stood for?
Yeah,
It's hard. I don't know where. I don't know where that. I don't know. I have no idea. I don't think it's fair to tell someone that they can celebrate something with boundaries. I don't think it's fair for someone who doesn't want you to do that voice to not be heard. And I think that their points are valid also. I have no idea what to do. I have no idea. No idea whatsoever.
Life is complicated.
No, I don't know. This is really, I don't know. It's really hard. The other day I was, I don't know if it was KERA. It was a PBS network for sure. They did a whole story on Dia de los Muertos. And the woman who was talking about it was a white woman who kept saying Dia de los Muertos. And she was the expert they brought in to talk about it. The whole documentary was her. And I just remember thinking, like, I don't like that. Like, you couldn't find anyone. Like, you couldn't find, but I don't know. She loved the culture. You could tell. She was passionate about what she was talking about. I don't know. I don't know. She loved the culture. She loved what she was talking about. She was excited to share it with people. She was trying to advance knowledge of it and advance the culture. And who's to say that maybe having her wouldn't have attracted people who would have been put off? I don't know. I'm making excuses for it now. I'm trying to figure out what, I don't know. I feel like it should have, I feel like I don't know. Here's a larger problem with that. Is historically, people are marginalized and shut down, and narratives aren't given a spotlight. And historically, when they finally are given a spotlight, they're told in a way that is censored by the people who have power. And a lot of times, it's like, okay, we'll let you say that, but you're going to say it how we want you to say it, and here's who's going to say it. And I think because we have like a history of that, it's kind of tender when you see stuff like that. When you're like, oh, okay, I don't really like, you can go back to like Martin Luther King, where they're like, I'm fine with you doing this, but maybe say it this way, maybe protest like this, maybe do this, maybe do that. And it's like, I don't know, the whole thing just feels, I don't know. It's just, I don't know. It feels like walking through like a landmine field, and you're trying to like navigate your steps. And I don't know if anyone is definitively wrong. And I think a lot of it has to do with intention. I think if you, it's just intention. What is your intention behind things? If you have good intentions and you're not trying to exploit people, I think that, that's my friend Jamal Barber. He's a printmaker in Atlanta. And I was on his podcast the other day, and we were talking about like tokenism, and a lot of, specifically within galleries, a lot of galleries have, especially like, 2 years ago, and like the height of like the Black Lives Matter movement and stuff, galleries went out of their way to give minority artists a voice. They were like, we want to have exhibitions. We're having a call for entry, and it's only for people of color. that was really great. But I was talking about it, and I was like, this is that like tokenism? Is that like, oh, for this moment, I want to platform this? And my friend Jamal said that it was always going to feel like tokenism because you had to do it the first time, right? Everybody had to do it. And he said what would make it tokenism is if they just did it once. If they did it once for this moment and then never followed up and never, made it equitable, if it was that, then you're just like a token of this thing, right? You're like a stamp in a moment. And he said it's just something that we're going to have to wait and see. Do they continue to platform voices other than their own? Do they continue to share power and space and things like that? Do they continue to share it after all of this is done? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that is an issue with what was happening. And I know some places have worked hard to make it more than just that moment. I don't know how much you followed Buckham's exhibitions even this past year. We actually had we worked with Tiana J. Buey, a Detroit artist. She's actually a printmaker also, but she was our juror and helped us build a call that was specifically to elevate marginalized artists. And we talked about specifically how do we make this moment more than a moment. So besides like the traditional, it was last April, BIPOC is the theme. Instead of just the traditional show, we actually selected artists to come back for feature exhibitions in our 2023-2024 season and gave them they get honorariums to help send their work as well. So we're trying, and I know a lot of
Yeah, I'm not saying you're not.
Yeah. We're working hard.
No, and I think that's great. And I mean, it's so it's wonderful that the work allows for conversations like this, that it opens a door to a lot. And people decide the level of conversation they want to have, especially surrounding my work. I give an artist talk, and then some people who don't want to go deeper into that leave. Some people who have questions linger. And I've been able to have a lot of really great conversations with people just through giving artist talks in the gallery to a lot of people. And in fact, just because you're from Florida, one of the most interesting things was in Florida. I gave an artist talk in Florida, and the diverse opinions in Florida is pretty epic, because it's literally like cutting a cake with a knife. And dividing a room in half. Whereas, in larger cities, or you're up north, or you're here, you can kind of assume the way everybody thinks. If you're in an art gallery in Austin, you're kind of preaching to the choir, versus getting to, go somewhere where that not everybody agrees with what you believe. It's interesting. It's good stuff. I try my best to tell the story in a way that is easily digestible for everyone, rather than tell the story of. Let me put it this way: I can construct the narrative of the story of the Endless Endeavor in a way that I feel would be best received to most audiences. So instead of telling the story of a guy who crossed the border, I can tell the story of a father who was willing to do anything for his children, and everybody can resonate with that. And then perhaps that helps people see what I'm talking about. There's too many labels on things that dehumanize people: immigrant, migrant. If you say father and stuff like that, it kind of opens people's eyes. The title of that first piece is called Illegal Human. And that idea of like just bringing things back to this is a human being. And yeah. Anyways.
Yeah. Okay. So now I'm going to get personal in case we weren't there yet.
Okay.
I'm going to bring up the prints of your daughters. Actually.
Okay.
That's where I was going. So I have these 3 beautiful prints, which I was on your website this morning, because this is the most recent piece is in here. that's in the
Um, I,
show, or
the most recent in your show, yes.
these three prints that were named after your daughters? And I was looking on your website this morning, preparing to make sure everything was in order. And I noticed you talked about these human beings kind of coming and their different personalities, but you also mentioned that you lost one of these daughters. So I don't know how much you feel open to talking about these prints, or who we have here, and or any of the symbolism, or we can skip it if you don't feel like it.
No, it's fine. So Daphne was stillborn.
Yeah, I'm so
So
sorry.
that's unfortunately it happens a lot more than I realized. Afterwards, we just through talking with other people, we knew several people that had delivered babies full term that were stillborn babies. Yeah, it's very it's sad. Yeah, that's this woodcut Daphne, and I wanted to make work about my daughters. But I didn't know anything about her, Daphne.
Mm.
So what I did was I carved the block like the weather we had the day she was born, which it was snowing. It was during that ice storm in Texas. So there's just snow everywhere. And I made that as a sort of like pot, with just soil in it, but without anything growing. This idea of unfulfilled potential, untapped growth. But I didn't want the pot to just look like sad and like, so I wanted to honor her in a way. I wanted to make the vessel as beautiful as possible. So I went in and added a lot of detail in like the flower and everything. And I tried to make it look vibrant and beautiful, while at the same time having like this kind of ominous tone. But to illustrate like the beauty of, I don't know,
Yeah,
of what I think her life would have been. So to kind of put it in there like that. And
it is
yeah,
a
I think,
it's beautiful, quiet, very quiet print. Has a stillness and weight
Mhm.
to it. Mhm.
Yeah, I'm going to make another. My wife and I have since had another daughter named Luna. And Luna is about 3 months old now.
Yeah.
So once she gets older and her personality develops, and probably around the time she's like 4 or 5, I'll probably make another one at the same size and call it Luna and have it there for the set of 4.
Yeah.
So mhm.
Oh,
Yeah,
wonderful.
it's I think it's been, yeah, I don't know. I think, yeah. Well, a lot of, no, that's whatever. Go ahead. What was the question?
So is Florence the all-consuming fire?
So the way that they're structured, the top half, okay, so the bottom half is made of imagery that represents the things that I know about them. The top half represents things that I hope for their life. Things that I hope that I struggle with, that they don't struggle with, things that I hope that, they're vigilant, that they're aggressive in life, that they're, that fulfill their potential, all kinds of stuff like that. Yeah. And yeah, so it's all just kind of, it's mixed together. Some things that, directly tie to them, and then some things that I hope they're just better at and do
Yeah, of
great
course.
and stuff. And then they kind of interact with each other. Yeah. Anyways, yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, I think it's great. I did portraits of my kids this past year. I have a 13-year-old son, Theo, and then my daughter just turned 8 this spring, Marigold. So it
Wow.
was kind of fun to do portraits. of them, and then the different imagery that kind of tied into them. They're very, very different people, but it's kind of fun. You hope so much for them.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love these. So thank you for sharing those stories. Yeah. Well, we have covered a lot today, and I
Yeah.
appreciate your time and everything. So I just real quick
Mhm.
before I finish up, you know, were there any like artists you're looking at that you wanted to like share with us, or just influences other than, you know, obviously family and heritage, just other things going on? Or I mean, you've laid a lot out already, so um,
You mean like artists that I look to for like influence,
yeah,
inspiration, things like that?
just things you're looking at. You know, sometimes it's not even artist, or it could be life, but yeah, artist.
Yeah, I think that there is a lot of life happening to me that I want to
Yeah.
talk about, but I want to figure out how to do it. Excuse me. Sorry. There is a lot of life happening to me that I want to figure out how to speak to in a way that is um making art is very therapeutic for me. So a lot of it is just like, what do I kind of need to get over? Like, what do what do I need help with? What do I want to talk about? Some things are too fresh, I think. Um, I really need to go to therapy is what I need to do. I think that but then again, maybe if I went to therapy, my art would be bad. I have no idea. This last year was absolutely the worst year of my life. So, you know, you kind of want to give it some time to kind of settle. You let the dust settle so you can look back and be like, oh, okay, because you're not sure if the story is over yet, you know? Um, I lost my daughter the same year I lost my mom.
Oh
And
gosh.
that's kind of, I don't know, that's a full year right there, you know, before everything else, before you factor in the pandemic. And I don't know. Yeah, it's but I don't want to, the way that I think about that has drastically changed just in a matter of months. So I almost don't want to make work about it until I've given it enough time to kind of stop back and look, um, and have given myself the time to understand or see the bigger picture. Um, so I'm definitely always, if anything happens to me, I'm looking for a way to, I don't know, make art about it. Just not in a way that like exploits people or my life, but let me say this. I was talking to someone the other day about what is an artist, right? Like what makes somebody an artist? If my grandma likes to paint on the weekend because it makes her happy, is she an artist? Or is she a hobbyist? Is an artist somebody who just do they have to make a living off of their art? Is that what makes them an artist? Like what makes somebody an artist? And I was going back and forth with my friend about this. And I think what I landed on was that for visual artists, right? That an artist is somebody who creating art is the primary way that they communicate. In order to fully communicate everything that they feel inside, in order to fully be alive and to like push things out, they have to make art. There's something that happens when they make art where there is literally no other way for them to say it. And I think that is what makes you an artist, whether you do it full time, whether you do it on the weekend, if that's how you're communicating, if that's like the main way, that there's something that you're saying and doing, that's the only way you can get it out of you. I think that makes you an artist, whether that's like, you know, you have to dance, like I have to dance, or you have to write poetry, or you have to play music. Something happens when you play music, you know, then I think that you're an artist. If there's something you can do with a guitar in your hands and something comes alive for you and something happens and there's nothing else like it, you get that feeling nowhere else, I think that you're an artist. And it's the same way with, you know, speaking, maybe public speaking, or, you know, it can be anything. But I say that to say that when life happens, it's like the only way I can communicate. It's the only way I can say these things and deal with it. And I can talk to my wife about it all day. I can go to therapy. I can do all this stuff, but there's something about turning it into art. It feels like I'm taking a load off of myself. And I can't describe it in any other way other than when I make art about it, when the piece is finished, I feel better. And it's like, I just have to make it.
Yeah, well, it's definitely, even when you were talking about your process earlier with the writing it out and assigning the images, like that's all part of your thinking through your feelings and thoughts. Yeah.
It's almost like going away into the woods and like being alone with yourself and then coming back, because in addition to writing it out and then assigning imagery, again, ideally, I'm spending a month with this piece. So without realizing it, I'm spending a month dedicating 8 hours of thinking time to something every day for a month. And when I'm done, I found clarity some way or another. I've thought through it enough and I've given myself enough time to really dissect what it is I'm feeling and why it is I'm feeling that way. As I'm carving it, as I'm carving that image, I'm thinking about what it represents. And I'm asking myself, how could this have happened? Why did this happen? Or how could this person think this way, or have done this thing, or all this stuff? And you know, you're forced to grapple with that day in, day out. And you work your way through the imagery, and you will arrive at some form of clarity after spending a month, hours and hours every day of a month thinking about one thing. You're going to arrive somewhere. And I think that the process of that is something that I need in my life.
Well, I'm sure, like even with myself, when I'm working on a painting and, it's based on like different family images and things, I'm having conversations with these people or remembering bits of conversations from my childhood or something. And so it ends up with this whole dialogue that goes on and with someone who's already deceased or whatever. But so I'm sure I can relate.
Yeah. It's one of the reasons I don't have any of my own art in my house, because I just don't want to look at it. I don't want to. I'm spending a lot of time with it and I'm working through something. And the last thing I want to see when I come home is the thing that I just spent like 8 hours on in my studio. And to kind of sit around and even if I was to go to Buckham and I was to sit in the gallery and look around, I'm surrounded by my life, by like reminders, sometimes of not good things, sometimes of really great things, and the beautiful life of my daughters and the wonderful sacrifices that people have made. And it's great to honor them that way. And some of it's really great. And then some of it is like, it does something to my stomach when I see it. And I'm just like, ugh. And I don't want that in my house. There's other things that are better to have. And speaking of what other artists I'm looking at, that's what I have in my house is other artists that I really enjoy. Alberto Cruz, he's a great printmaker out of Oaxaca. I love his work. I have some of his prints. Leopoldo Mendez, he's a really fantastic historic printmaker. I have one of his pieces. I'm very lucky to have it. Who else do I really like? Omar Gonzalez, I have some of his work. Just got a lot of really great art around the house. A lot of prints, lithographs, some paintings, small paintings by Carlos Don Juan. A lot of, speaking of like culture and stuff, a lot of work that reminds me of growing up in the culture. I can show you. Can I move you? Is that?
Yeah, of course.
So this is a really great piece by my friend Wendy, and it's called Texans versus Tejanos. And I don't know if you can see it. It's little toy soldiers. They're shooting at each other.
Oh my goodness.
This is a clothesline. It's a collagraph or a chincolet. Each piece is like cut out and hung. This is one of my favorites over here. Jose Guadalupe Posada. Are you familiar with him? He's a really great printmaker. These are from newspapers. He was like an illustrator for a newspaper place back in like the early 1900s. This is a great one from my friend Marco Sanchez.
Yeah, wow.
It's an etching. And then right next to it are some paintings from Carlos Don Juan. They're little paletas.
Those are awesome.
Those are little watercolors.
Yeah,
This is
wow.
Alberto Cruz. He's got very
Oh,
like
nice.
really like playful, fun stuff. So I'll turn this light on so you can see in here. This is a really great one. It's so shiny. From Pepe Coronado. He's a Dominican printmaker. This is a really great one from Omar Gonzalez. It was a commission piece by the city of San Antonio, and it's about like a historic mission. And then this is my Leopoldo Mendez print that I'm super in love with.
Yeah.
And then these are some from Francisco Delgado. He's probably one of my favorite artists. These are both, I have so much of his work, but most of it doesn't fit in my house. So I keep it at the studio. This is another one, Pavel Esvedo. He's a printmaker out in Los Angeles. Anyways, now I'm just roaming around. But yeah, I'm so much. I try to surround myself with work that isn't my work, but is kind of fits on the same narrative and reminds me of maybe how I was raised or just familiar imagery. For a long time, are you familiar with the Cheech Center that opened up today? It opens today, I think.
His collection?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Opened the museum today.
Oh, wow.
Today or yesterday, it opened officially at the Riverside Museum of Art. It's called the Cheech Center. And for a while, he was collecting work that was about like the Chicano experience. And, you know, talking about movies like Coco and Encanto and all this stuff, you have, everyone is raised in a specific way with iconography and stuff, images that are recognizable to them. And it wasn't being recognized in fine art. So when you were going somewhere and you saw a piece of art that was like a still life and it had like a Fideo box, you were like, whoa, like I've never seen that. So he was really collecting work that represented people and was more, that was just, you know, it was providing something that would make the art market in general more inclusive. And I think that's a lot of what I'm grabbing or what I'm surrounding myself with at home is just work that is familiar to me, even though these people are all over the country. You know, it's like, oh yes, I recognize that. Yes, of course. Yeah. So surrounding myself with stuff like that. And yeah, a lot of I look at a lot of historic artists, Posada, Mendez, and then randomly, like I really like Don Nice paintings. Don Nice was a really popular pop artist back in the day, and I'm obsessed with that dude's work. I don't do paintings, and my work looks nothing like his, but I am just in love with his paintings. And if I could paint however I wanted, I would paint like Don Nice. I would do single objects of popular American culture floating in a white background. That's what I would do. But I can't get away with that without just being a knockoff Don Nice. So I don't know what to do. I've thought about ways. I'm like, how can I rebrand what this guy's doing? Because he's dead now. So I'm like, how can I figure this out? And I can't. If I figure it out, then one day maybe I'll do that. But anyways, very long-winded answer for what work I'm looking at and what I'm.
No, it's perfect. Thank you. This has been really incredible. Thank you so much for not only taking the time to chat with me today, but for sending your work all the way up to Flint so that we could share it with our audience, not just the people who wander in from the street, but our other, community members who, joined us for different art walks, but also, as I mentioned, I think probably before the recording, we had shared postcards with our Latinx Technology and Community Center, and individuals came over to see the show, and that was really important to them because, as you said, this work isn't always seen abundantly up here in Michigan. So it has been really wonderful, and I know that my staff and I thoroughly enjoyed being here and living with your work for this time. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank
so
you.
much for sharing it with us. Oh, that was really great. I just want to say thank you one more time to Benjamin for spending this time with me. I loved hearing about the printing process and the images and life and culture and everything. Really how his identity and cultural assimilation has been central in his work, and just really that embracing and honoring your past identity and your ancestors. So thank you, Benjamin, and thank you to all of you who support us by visiting the gallery or through your generous donation. So thank you so much. Bye.